Still the Ways and Means Committee. It's still Wednesday, the 24th, 1:15. We are going to pick up S-160, an act relating to state education property taxes and flood-related damage. This is an identical bill to H-541 that we've spent significant time with already. As I said this morning, towns are really waiting for us to act on this. There are significant abatements requested and pending, and I think towns are nervous to act without the confirmation of this bill passing. And, time is of the essence here. And so while everything we do could always be better, I am going to encourage us to have a good enough attitude to this as we look over it and ideally vote today. There are other mechanisms in other places in the building. This is not the be all and end all of flood abatement. There's a lot of work to do on flood abatement. So there are bills that are actively moving that will come here that are about, future prevention and resilience work. There's a bill in the Government Operations Committee that is focused on ways to make it easier for towns to actually do sort of the procedures related to abatement. So they can maybe batch abatements. So that's in the Gov Ops Committee. And then in budget adjustment, as we will all discuss today, there is significant funds available to municipalities in order to cover some of the costs related to flooding. So lots of opportunities to sort of continue to work on this after this bill, work on the topic after this bill does pass. Not to say, if we see we have the work, we have to do the work that we need to do. And I want us to do that work. I just want to talk big picture and intention before we jump in. And with that, Kirby, can you talk us through S-160?
Good afternoon, everyone. Kirby Keaton, Legislative Counsel.
Nice work.
Yeah. Is it large enough? About the right size?
Good. Lovely.
Learning a little bit every day about this. So this is S-160 as passed by the Senate. There were no changes from, if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about H-541 for flood abatement for municipal property tax on flood relief. So there were no changes in the Senate. Should I walk through the
Yeah, I
parts
think that would be
again?
a refresher on what we're looking at is helpful.
Sure. So there's three parts. The first is reimbursement for municipalities for education tax for when those municipalities granted abatement. To be eligible for reimbursement, there's a deadline of April 15, 2024 for the abatement to be granted. The abatement for education tax had to be proportional to municipal tax, and the property tax credit is applied afterwards. So there's no reimbursement for that. For an eligible property under the bill, the property would have had to have been lost or destroyed, which by lost, it means loss in value, or destroyed due directly or indirectly to severe storms and flooding in the area that was declared a natural disaster between July 1, 2023 and October 15, 2023. And the property has to meet one of these other criteria, either 50% or greater loss in value to the primary structure on the property, loss of use of the property by the property owner for 60 days or more, a loss of access to utilities for the primary structure for 60 days or more, or condemnation. So that's the reimbursement part of it. The second part of the bill is to reimburse interest for municipalities that had to borrow money to pay the ed fund if their tax collections were disrupted due to flooding between July 1st and October 15. And the third part of the bill, of course, this whole process, the process for the first two things will be done through the Department of Taxes, working with the Agency of Education to make the reimbursements. And the final part is for tax years 2023 and 2024 to exclude from household income for property tax credits and, which is property tax credits in this case, not rent rebate, but to exclude disaster relief payments from the definition of household income so that those payments don't have to be included and counted towards someone's income to qualify for income sensitivity. That's the bill.
Okay.
Did you say first time, Kirby, that 60 days and 50%, is that sort of standard or?
That's something like as far as standard goes, is there any precedent for that? That was not included in the bill that was done after Irene.
Okay.
That's new.
Yeah.
As a way to give some requirements for the Department of Taxes to follow.
You're saying that, I just don't remember. There's this typical standard, or is it just something we're using because it's appropriate under the circumstances?
I mean, I don't know a lot about the policy discussion that went into
I don't
that.
have a problem. I'm just.
Yeah.
So we drafted this before Kirby started.
Okay.
Abby drafted it.
Okay.
But what I tell you and sort of the background to that is we wanted to use thresholds that FEMA also uses.
Okay, that
So
is.
that towns wouldn't have to just do the work themselves to know if something met the threshold. And that's why those are the numbers there.
Can you just be explicit? Are you saying that FEMA's threshold is 60 days?
FEMA uses those thresholds and has that data sort of available. 50% or greater loss is a FEMA threshold.
What about the 60 days?
The 60 days, I think we were thinking it would be a self-attestation, and it was a whole lot of people talking about how many days made sense. And 60. 30 seemed like not enough, and 90 seemed like too long. Representative Beck?
Curtis, on the first page, lines 10 and 11, where it says a municipality must have abated in proportion to the abated municipal tax. So is that saying like percentage or like dollar amount? Or is that up for interpretation?
I read that to mean percentage,
Like percent?
proportional. So if it 50%, 50%,
Okay,
because yeah, as I'm sure you know, the dollar amount
could be very different.
could be very different because
Yeah.
education tax tends to be quite a bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a JFOS for
We do. We'll get there in a moment. Anything else on the language? Yeah.
that? I mean, I totally support the concept of this, and I really want to make sure that as many eligible Vermonters as possible can take advantage of this. And so, I understand that there's like a timeline here to keep this bill moving, to get clarity to towns, and don't want to disrupt that. But I am just continuing to think about how we can help as many potentially eligible property owners know about the abatement process, and that there's sort of sufficient time for that process to happen in towns that may not have done that outreach moving forward. Going to continue to think about ways that we can maybe continue to improve this.
Are folks aware of, I'm like, oh, totally a question. Are folks aware, are you aware, or anyone else, of proposals in other committees to provide technical assistance of some kind to towns to navigate the flood process or post-flood process? You haven't sponsored anything like that? That's like a Sims bill written all over it.
Is it in 586?
I don't know. That's what I'm.
I mean, I.
There,
Other.
there is a piece of the so-called omnibus flood recovery bill. It has to do with procedures, which could be a vehicle for modifications. I am behind some of the speedy express nature of this, as is Ann Cummings, just because we're the poster children for damage. And so the way to get it to go is just don't tamper with it, at least out of the gate, and add whatever qualifications in a later vehicle. It's purely a tactical move. So the towns know that this is at least pretty sure going to happen and they can budget for it. It's as simple as that, really.
Two A, primary structure, I'm trying to imagine a piece of property with various structures. What is a primary, what constitutes the primary structure?
For purposes of this bill, I think it's something that the Department of Taxes will have to figure out when administering it. I think that the department would be used to doing that in other things that it administers, like current use.
So it might not be the home, it could be a business and the home would be destroyed or something like that. So it could be different structures. Okay.
Yeah, it could be. I think I would speculate that it's trying to differentiate, like there's those in-law apartments that are off to the side, and like that's not the primary focus for this requirement, that it's going to be the primary structure in the parcel.
Okay.
Anyone else? I will offer that I think it would be helpful for us to think of sort of the pieces, like Representative Stearns mentioned, that would help this bill itself be as successful as possible, to think about that language and put something together, and then we can put it on a bill as it comes through or send it off to another committee or something like that, as sort of the extra work connected to this.
So the towns get reimbursed and the individuals? I don't understand why the towns need to know this right off. Is it towns that are getting reimbursement also as well as individuals?
Yes, in this case, all of this is municipal reimbursement for what was paid, either previously paid because abatement was given to individuals, so that the town abated individuals, and this bill is reimbursing the towns.
Abated for taxes
Yes, or
or taxes? Okay.
yeah, and it could also be for abatements that are done after the passage of this as well, all the way up to April 15th of this year.
So just to be explicit about my concern, that I know that there's variability about how abatement has happened around flood impacted properties across my town. So one town did a whole bunch of effort to like do outreach to folks who they knew had eligible properties, and those folks, went and requested abatement and then received it, and those folks, and that now this town is well positioned to receive the reimbursement for their abatement. Other communities did not do that same active outreach, but maybe once this bill is passed, especially if we encourage them, hopefully they'll do that outreach to eligible properties so that those other Vermonters whose house ended up down the creek are offered the same support, and then it doesn't depend which town you're in, and kind of awareness about it. You do more to elevate.
So normally, in cases of abatement, if there's a fire or flood or something on a small location, the town just absorbs that among the other taxpayers. But in this case, I'm assuming the rationale is that it's so large.
It's too much to absorb. Exactly.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Don't ever assume because I'm asking questions that I don't go along with it.
I don't ever assume that about, if I assume that about people in this committee, we would never get anywhere. We love to ask questions. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to ask questions. Yeah. Yeah. And I just, so folks remember, the league has come in and testified their support for this. The commissioner of taxes has come in and testified their support for this.
Yes.
other folks too that I've left my mind a little bit, but those are sort of the two that stand out. Any,
Time when Vermonters put their boots on and stuff.
yeah, sure. Any other questions for Kirby before Julia? Okay. Thanks.
You need a motion?
Nope, we're gonna do the fiscal note. Oh, hello, nice to see you again. It's been.
For the record, I'm Julie Richter of the Joint Fiscal Office. Would you like me to share my screen?
That'd be great. And
Okay.
take us through the fiscal note if you can.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
So the fiscal note for S-160 is published on the committee's page under my name. This should look very familiar to the committee. It's literally the same as the fiscal note that I presented to you all a couple weeks ago for H 541.
Except it said
No.
different bill.
Only difference is that this is S-160 as passed by the Senate, and the old fiscal note said H 541. Also, one typo has been corrected. Other than that, it really is the same. So JFO estimates this bill will cost 1.1 million to the education fund in fiscal year 2024.
Plenty of money in there to go.
Do you have a sense, given the most recent outlook that we have looked at with you, what that sort of $1.1 million corresponds to on tax rate?
So 1.1 million, while the yield and or the non-homestead property tax rate will need to be adjusted for 1.1 million. In the context of the education fund, we won't see any change in what is on the sheet here because it is so minimal that it would be in something that's already been rounded.
Thank you.
Would you say it's de minimis?
It's not, we can't ever call $1 million de minimis. Any other questions for Julia? Thank you. I think Representative Brannigan asked me if I wanted a motion earlier. You did, right? I would love a motion.
Okay, so I move that we accept this bill as sent to us with no changes.
Okay, Representative Brannigan moves so we find S-160 favorable. Representative Anthony? Seconded.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, if the clerk could please call the roll.
Sure. Andrews, yes. Anthony,
Yes.
Beck,
Yes.
Brannigan,
Yes.
Demrow,
Yes.
Maslin.
Yep.
Meadows.
Yes.
Odie.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Canfield,
Yes.
Kornheiser.
Yes,
That's 12-0-0.
to everyone. Representative Anthony, would you like to report this bill?
I'd be delighted. Thank you.
And we have a break until 1:45.